Welcome back to Product Data Weekly. This is a short practical podcast about the realities of product data operations. Each week we explore the challenges that sit behind growing catalogs, evolving systems and ever-increasing data demands. No theory, no vendor hype, just grounded conversations about what it really takes to manage product data at scale. If you're involved in e-commerce, product information, supplier onboarding, ERP, PIM, marketplace feeds or anything connected to product data, this is the podcast for you. Welcome back. How are you?
Hi everyone.
Right, so today we wanted to talk about something that is, we're going to talk about FAQs on product pages, and FAQs have been around for a long time on product pages, right? Like, I don't know, for years. But it's slightly different out there at the moment that if you don't have FAQs on your product data pages, there's actually quite a big impact now. And yes, it is because of AI.
Well, and they're like answer engines, right? AI models are basically answer engines, and FAQs are answers.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, is that old FAQs used to just be about kind of search. It was about
Yeah, I
SEO.
think a lot of the time they were like, just aren't. It's like in the spec data it says, size medium, and then it'll be like underneath, it'll be like, is this product available in a size medium? It's like, well, yeah, because it's in that doesn't really add a lot of value, does it? So.
Exactly. So tell us a bit more about what happens if you don't have it there.
Yeah. So I mean, I was going to kind of use a little story from a few weeks ago. Yeah, because I'm sure there's lots of listeners who don't care as much as we do about the UK weather. Sorry, everyone. Sorry, Australians that are listening, for us moaning about how hot it is. But yeah, I mean, we had a heat wave in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and basically we did what everyone else did and went out to buy a paddling pool for our kids. Yeah, this whole process of buying this paddling pool became a perfect example of the issues around like the lack of FAQs and trusted FAQs, and how they kind of surface in answer engines and stuff. Interestingly, actually, it wasn't actually the paddling pool that was the issue in this. I also went and looked for like a pump, like a filter pump for the pool. It's quite a big paddling pool, and there's one way of cleaning it, all that sort of stuff. I actually turned to like answer engines to solve this problem, various answer engines, mainly maybe through Google AI search and that sort of thing. And basically the interactions I had on Google and then subsequently on Amazon's AI assistant, I can't remember what it's called, but they've got one on their website now. Ultimately I ended up buying the wrong pump and, having to send it back. And I think like the reason this was the case was partly to do with like the lack of explicit product data like on the Amazon website about this individual product. Bear in mind this was like a marketplace seller, it was a kind of third party supplier. But also it was like the clearly like the lack of FAQs and indexed FAQs, and you would have, like for this product, you would have thought like one of the number one answers people were looking for was like compatibility, because that's ultimately what it was about. And yeah, clearly the compatibility information was vague, and it was vague because this brand had two different types of paddling pools, some that supported filters, some that didn't, which was not referenced. Basically it's a vicious circle, right? This whole thing is a vicious circle with FAQs, because it's like, how can you predict all of the important answers that people are looking for a given product without those people asking the questions in the first place? And if people are asking regular questions, like if you have an FAQ section on your product page and you have a way of customers submitting those questions into you to review those questions, and whether it's like socially harvest content, that answers them, or whether it's you answering them internally, at least you get some visibility of the types of questions people are answering. The irony of all this now is like you can get AI models themselves to suggest all the questions that people are likely to ask, right?
Yeah.
And you can even generate the answers only if you've got structured data about the products.
Yeah.
You can generate those answers basically. So
I think the other untapped place to go to is returns reasons.
Yeah, reason codes. Yeah. Well, it's like didn't they? I often wondered if anyone actually looks at the return reason codes, but now they're like a treasure trove, aren't
Absolutely. It was normally only like the logistics team that looked at it to
they?
see
Yeah.
if they were to blame for the return or not. Like that was kind of, is it going to hit my P&L? But I think, I know with Amazon, for example, if you do a return, they make you write a reason as to why. So
Yeah.
being able to harvest that information and then feed
Mm,
that back in is like, I
yeah.
mean, you could just use that
Totally.
to write
I
that.
mean, I think that's kind of the context, isn't it? Of like FAQs is like a kind of when we're talking like directly on the product page and all of that sort of stuff. It's more about like the ultimate impact of customers buying the wrong thing, or it's like the return of that product and stuff. I think the other thing we've talked about a lot, haven't we, is like losing the traffic for FAQs, because I think most of that kind of answer engine traffic, even when it's like what is the best product for X, most of the time you're sent to a lot of like blog, social media, content heavy websites that basically their whole business model is like harvesting this social proof information and then kind of getting cited. And there's a lot of platforms popping up where you can see like where your brand is mentioned in LLMs, like which sources and all of that sort of stuff. It's almost like your product page should become like a kind of answer engine hub. That's thing. I think that's where it's headed, right? It's like
Absolutely. And I mean, when we're looking at sources of when we do AI readiness audits and when we look at sources of where it's actually going as a trusted source, Reddit actually comes up massively because it's looking for that social proof as a trust. But the problem with that is that if you don't answer those questions on your pages, it won't even it won't go there. It'll just go straight to somebody else. So that has all of that social proof.
It's like authority, isn't it? It's like building
Exactly.
your authority as not just like you answering the questions, but and maybe answering questions that are not obvious for people. They're not obvious questions that have been answered already. I think that's the other thing, really. I think there's a lot of reverse engineering these processes, isn't it? It's like you've really got to kind of go from the customer's view inwards for each category and product type to determine it.
Great.
So there you go. So you just, I mean, so the last thing I was just going to end on is about 20 years ago when I started in e-commerce. I'm showing how old I am now. I think it was Bazaar Voice. Reviews and ratings platform was very prolific. I mean, I think they still are, but like, they were selling the first iteration of their social Q&A solution. I think this was about 18 years ago. Maybe it wasn't 18 years ago. Maybe it was more like 15. But the point is this was a problem. This was a thing that was being solved 15 years ago. It was kind of like, at the time, the value of it was kind of good, but it wasn't like it still involved like humans reading the answers and asking the questions and all that sort of stuff. And I think the irony is now, like, a lot of brands that have implemented those sorts of solutions are probably doing a lot better now because they've got like this backlog of AEO content just sitting on their websites, you know. And I just thought it was really ironic that they kind of solved a problem 15 years later that they probably had no visibility was ever coming.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was talking to somebody in the industry the other day, and they were talking about how they've got now an integration that they're feeding customers' product pages with Bazaar Voice and Trustpilot reviews in a slightly different way, basically to answer that. So it is. Yeah. So,
Sweet.
yeah. Good.
Well done,
Well,
Bazaar Voice.
exactly.
Don't know how we ended up plugging them. Other FAQ engines are available.
Exactly. So if you want any more practical tips and tricks like this, you can also sign up to our Product Data Weekly newsletter, which comes out every Thursday at productdataweekly.com. And we shall see you next week for another episode.
Thanks,
Ciao for
everyone.
now. Bye.
Bye.